Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 160 of the Wool Circle. My name is Rebecca, and I'm coming to you from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, in the far north of Canada. I'm coming to you pre-recorded today because as you watch this, I am actually in Yellowknife for an event with my family, and today is my oldest daughter's 13th birthday, so we're going to be spending the day doing her favorite things. So Rachel has very kindly agreed to stream this for you guys, and I look forward to catching up with chat later. Today is a very special day, too, because we are celebrating the conclusion of our Year of Yarn study, our study of Sarah Anderson's book, The Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs, that has started in January 2024, which seems like a million years ago now. A lot has changed since then, but the yarn keeps on spinning. So I have a big celebration plan to highlight all of the amazing work that we've all done on this study together. And I'm going to talk about what comes next, which is just to give you a heads up, it's going to be a zero to hero project, and we're going to talk about prepping that project today. So without any more rambling from me, let's get started. All right, it's time for our community participation celebration of our book study, our Year of Yarn. I don't know why we called it that since it was always planned to be 2 years. But starting in January 2024 and through last month, this month really, we've been working through the Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs by Sarah Anderson. And this is an absolute classic of a book. It was published in 2012, so only about 14 years ago. And I would say it's really stood the test of time. It's just a really excellent introduction to so many of the yarns that we want to spin today. It's been a really amazing journey. I have already done community participation roundups for most of this book, so I'm gonna but I still wanted to sort of walk this whole journey with you guys because it feels like this was really a study we did together. It's not the sort of thing where anyone should feel like they have to spin every single yarn that Sarah did, but it felt like together we covered so many of those bases and we dug deep into different areas. We explored some areas she didn't, and we answered some questions for ourselves. So I kind of wanted to celebrate that whole journey that we did this together. So I'm going to skate kind of quickly, just as an overview, through the first few modules. We broke the book up into 4 kind of main modules for, just to make it a little bit more bite-sized. We did a back to the basics at the beginning, and then we dug in on singles over the first summer. And then over the first kind of fall and winter, we covered, over about 6 months, we covered like yarn structures. So lots of different ways that plies are put together into different types of yarn. And then we took a break this past summer, and over the last fall and winter, we've been doing textured yarns. So that's the sort of 4 modules that we did. And if you're interested in the syllabi for that, if that's ever something you want to go back and look at, just let us know that's available to you. So, Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs. Let's get started. Okay, so here we are. Here I am. And let's just dive in at the beginning, shall we? So part one was back to basics. It was really like the first chapter, chapter and a half, where we talked about, the drafts. That's a topic we keep coming back to because it's just it's so kind of key to the basic process of spinning that we really want to always make sure to circle back to that for review purposes and for the newer spinners that we know are always out there and always joining us. So let's dive right in. The very first exercise that Sarah had us do was messing with twists, just taking a large roving and exploring, looking at how twist works, which was, I think, a lesson that that served us well for the rest of the program. Lauren did some showed the difference between S and Z twist, and Allison showed the way that yarn balances when you ply it together. You twist it two ways and then you ply it together. So that was the very first experiment. Not quite a yarn, but just a teachable moment. And then we dug into our default yarn. This was to talk about two-ply. This is not in the book, but it's something that we talk about a lot at Woolen Spinning is just, what is your default yarn? What's your starting place to spin just mostly two-ply yarns? And these are just some examples. Lots of people really enjoyed digging into this, whether it was on a wheel or on spindles. Several people did comparisons that they have different default yarns on different tools, which was really interesting. So those are all some natural colored ones, and there were also some colorful ones. I'm starting to dig into using what are they called? Control cards. These are, again, different. Ruth explored different ratios, how her default changes when she just changes one thing, just changes the ratio. Let's see. I can't quite read those to see closely, but there was some just different fibers. If you start with your default and you just change one thing, you're immediately into this experimentation mode. And I think a lot of people really enjoyed digging into that. So once we had our kind of, I got to make sure that I remember to move my face around because I had a lot of fun making all these different slideshow layouts, and hopefully I don't cover anything up with my face. So draft explorations, meaning woolen and worsted. We talked last episode in the beginner's corner about worsted drafting and woolen being a long draw, and several people did some comparisons about what does it look like when I do the woolen and worsted on my same fiber, which is just such an interesting thing to do, especially even if you're a more experienced spinner, it can be really fun to go back and look at that again once you feel like you really have those down and explore it again or explore it on a different fiber. Just a really nice kind of snack to do that. Okay, so we got into singles as we did that over the summer. There's just so many different ways to make singles yarns. We often default to plied yarn. Not everybody, but we often default to a 2 or 3 ply. But it's worth it to explore, what are different ways that we can make singles. It can be really good just for technique, for learning about twists and how it works. And a lot of folks really dug into this one. We started with slub singles just as a way to teach your fingers how to make thicker singles. When you're getting started, I think the tendency is to go thinner and thinner because you're trying to be consistent, right? And as you go, you can always make it thinner to try and make it more consistent. But making a slub yarn is a really great way to teach your fingers to think about drafting more fibers at the same time. Esther and Amanda and Stacy all made some. And we also had Esther, who did the kind of jump to make take those slub singles and turn them into some thicker singles. So that transitioned us to making consistent, thicker singles. We had Stacy, who we've got both the yarn above and the swatch below are both from Stacy. I'm showing this nice, the amazing consistency of those beautiful gray singles. Amanda and Lisa both shared some of their singles, and you know that they're lower twist, but you can still get a balanced, beautiful, fluffy yarn. Now, an interesting journey that Sarah took us on was the idea of felting singles. You can felt or full your singles. Like a lot of us full our yarns as just part of the finishing process, but this is about fully felting them so that they're no longer elastic. Alberto did he did both of those samples that are he did some slub singles that he felted and also some just plain singles that he felted. And Amanda felted some singles, and she also Amanda did a comparison of fold versus felted. Tina felted a bunch of them, and Stacy did some locks, some long wool. So very cool. And then the next step was to felt these singles and then take the twist out, which can be a really interesting technique for making a felt yarn that doesn't have any twist but holds together because it's felted. So Lauren explored that and then made these beautiful mittens out of them, and Amanda spun I'm not sure what I said. Lauren did the brown ones all the way over there, and then Amanda did these super, super thick singles that she felted with her kiddo. That was super fun to see. And then we got to the point of adding things to our singles. So this was really interesting. There's different ways to wrap and auto wrap, whether it's a thread or something sparkly or another yarn. And Esther, Maria, Lauren, Amanda, and Stacy were everybody that I could find who had messed with auto wrapping. This is very tidy auto wrapping, actually. Sometimes I think what we see from Amanda's is a little bit what I think of as more typical, in that it can be very sort of carefree and irregular. Whereas if you can control the wrapping, I think of that as just wrapping rather than auto wrapping. I'm not sure if I have much of that. But you can control it, and then it's not so much auto wrapping, it's just wrapping, and you get more of that tidier spiraling around. Alberto and Maria both experimented with adding knops, what Sarah calls knops, to their auto wrapping or wrapping, which is where you stop being tidy and then you just wrap it over and over, and you end up with this little knot, which can be a really interesting way to add a bit more texture, and just add a little bit, you start getting more artsy, starting to get to a point where you can play with the texture and the wrapping in what you're adding to your singles yarns. Is that it? Oh, there's one last, I think this is the last one, which is using energized singles. Maria experimented with a bunch of different energized singles and actually ended up making a cowl showcasing the way that your yarn biases in different directions based on which way your energized singles are twisted. Amanda Swatch does a really good job of showing, if they're energized to the right, or which would be, let's see if I can get it right. If they're energized Z, they will lean to the right. If they're energized S, they will lean to, I'm backwards. They will lean to the left. You can see what I mean. The way that you spin it is the way that your stitches will lean in stockinette stitch. And then the middle, she's alternating between S and Z. Maria made a whole cowl using that to create a chevron pattern, which was really, really cool. So those are just some of the many things you can do with singles. We really enjoyed exploring that, not this past summer, but the summer of 2024. And that was just really, really lovely. Part 3 was when we started doing some longer studies. We started really digging into some work that would take us, it took us about 6 or 7 months to do this work. And yeah, so this covered, the singles chapter was in the singles, module, but here we started getting into, spiral yarns and cabled yarns and crimp yarns and, crepe yarns that take singles that can be ordinary singles and combine them in different ways. So I'll talk at the end of this section about what I did, but I want to focus in on what you guys did. So we started with chain ply, which is just a super popular, I think, beloved way of handling our yarns. Chain ply meaning basically you just make a long crochet chain as you're plying. It's a little bit challenging to get the hang of, but it's such a fun way to handle color and keep colors crisp and clean that a lot of us have done a lot of chain plying. But for some of us, it was the first time. And there were small samples, big samples. I think this was Deirdre's first, and Stacy did a comparison between chain ply and a different kind of more traditional plying that mixed up the colors more, which is always so much fun to see. And we've got more chain ply. Maria did some, Haram did some, Sophia. Alberto, this is way zoomed in, he did a 9-ply chain ply where he spun all these super fine singles and then did them together, and you can see how crazy round that is. Alberto did a bunch of wild samples with 9 plies. That was a really neat kind of narrative. Excuse me, I'm in the way. Now you can see Sonia's. It was a really neat thing to see kind of that crop up with Alberto did some really neat experiments with 9 plies just to explore. It's very cool. All right. After chain ply, we took a pause to talk about some more traditional plies, especially 4-ply. I feel like 4-ply is just a little bit more unusual than 3-ply. 3-ply is still kind of like a default yarn for a lot of us, but once you start adding a 4th ply, there's usually a reason. Either that, you want that real roundness, that really round structure you get from adding more plies, or your singles are thinner than you wanted to create a final yarn, so you want to add another ply. But we started to explore that. And I included Susan's picture because this was her first ever 3-ply, and she did it with 3 different colors to make this wonderful color twisting yarn that you can really see all 3 of the plies in there. And then Dion's is a 4-ply. The next big one that we dug into was Hauser yarn, which was, I think, a struggle for a lot of us because it's tricky. Hauser yarn is generally at least a 4-ply. Generally it's 4-ply. You can do more, but usually 4. Where you take your 4 singles all spun the same way, you up-ply them in pairs, and then you ply them together. And it takes a lot of twist on that last step to get them all together. And I think, a lot of us, one theme that I remember seeing during this time is that, like, it can end up looking like a 2-ply. But it's supposed to add more elasticity. I think the jury's still out on whether these yarns are actually more elastic. It just probably depends on how much you finally balance that twist out and how much it's just energized. Like, it's just the energy that makes it have a little bit more bounce, a little bit more elasticity. And I think it was a mixed bag. I think some people experienced this and some of them didn't. Some people loved this yarn and some people did not enjoy it at all or were not happy with their results. But it was really fun to see everybody give it a go. Cabled yarn. Cabled yarn is, again, I'm going to hold up my fingers to be like plies. Cabled yarn is where you have all your 4 the same direction, but then you ply them in pairs normally, not applying, but plying them the way you normally would for a 2-ply, but adding extra twists so that you can then ply those 2-plies together. And this pops them into a really neat look. I think a lot of people enjoyed this one. As much of a challenge as cable plying can be to get that like Goldilocks just right twist on the final step, when you do, it's so satisfying that I think a lot of people really connected with this one. And I wanted to zoom in on Pauline's because she said this was the favorite yarn that one of her favorite yarns that she made in this whole study. On the 4 pictures to that away, I'm not going to get left and right correct because I'm backwards. She did these light rainbow colors together to make with Tessel was the name of the brand. I think one of these is crepe, actually. I think I might be a little bit mixed up. But the one closest to me is definitely a cabled yarn, and the one above it is definitely a cabled yarn. And I think the far ones are actually crepe yarns. But then she took what she had learned from the little Tessel samples and she applied that to our breed and color study that came up this in January of 2025. She combined 3 singles of the deep freeze, the blues all over colorway, and one with the gentle morning, which had the pinks and purples, and made this gorgeous cabled yarn. And you can see that in this close up above me, you can see that it's just, the twist on this is just so perfect. The way that the singles look relaxed and interlocked with each other. So I could definitely see why this is one of Pauline's absolute favorites. And I love this yarn that she made. I love the way the colors work. It was just a really neat yarn. Crepe yarn is a cousin of cabled yarn, but instead of having 2, you have 3. One is spun in the opposite direction as these 2, so that when you ply them, it's the same direction as the single, and then you put those together. Lisa did some neat experiments with one. Alberto did some experiments where the third ply, the one that's not plied together, is a different color. Stacy made this gorgeous skein where you can really see the structure of it in this. This is really, really excellent twist in this one from Stacy, where you can see how that the single and the 2-ply are just sort of chasing each other around the structure really beautifully. And I'll go back one. This one on excuse me. There we go. Oh, and just to reiterate, this one on the far side, that's a crepe yarn as well. I'm losing track of where my button is. And one that we did file under structure that could have been under 2-ply, it does have its own chapter, is gimp yarns or spiral yarns. This is really can be just a 2-ply or a 3-ply or any kind of yarn where one yarn is thicker than the other. Renate highlighted, this is one that she's done actually fairly recently, I think. She did this beautiful Cormo as thick and thin singles in one, and then the other one just quite thin. So the whole thing spiraled, but some of the areas are thicker than others. And she had some insights about the twist and, things that she could have done differently. But I think this is just a really, really beautiful spiral yarn. So I just wanted to take a minute to highlight this one because I just think it's so lovely, and the ways the color plays together. I think you did a really nice job with this. Another favorite, so crepe, I think I did this a little bit out of order, but to go back to crepe yarns, if you take one of your crepe singles, one of the 2-ply singles in particular, and make it really, really thick, a lot thicker than the other ones, then you can make what's called a bubble crepe or a rick-rack or a cage yarn. It has many different names, but it's just this really neat way, kind of like a spiral ply, but it's like you would make it by making a spiral ply, but when you do the spiral ply, you make it tight. You make it tighter than you would, and then you ply it the other direction with another thin single. And it just makes this really neat effect, this bubbling kind of effect. And both Nicole and Esther said that these were some of their favorite yarns that they made from this study. I did want to take half a second to talk about the yarns I did for this section, because this was probably what am I saying? This was easily the biggest project I did for this whole year. I spun sock yarns in each of the structures that we studied. So let's see if I can remember what they all are. These are the breed and color study colorways that we did, and this one is the same breed, but just hand processed from fleece. So this was a 3-ply, the hand processed, and then we had a 4-ply on Fireside, a crepe yarn on Gentle Winter Morning, I think it was, and then I did a Hauser yarn on Deep Freeze. And then all of these yarns on the far side, this is all a bamboo blend. So the breed blend and color study, I should say, that was 40% Wensleydale, 40% oatmeal BFL, 20% mohair. So lots of long wools. Loved spinning it. Very fast, very dense. And then these guys were all it's sometimes called a panda blend, which is 60% merino, 30% bamboo, 10% nylon, if I'm remembering correctly. So I just wanted to be able to compare all of these so that I could kind of get a sense of how they all wear, how elastic they all are. And so this is, let me see if I remember, 4-ply. This one was, I don't want to get it wrong. This was a Hauser yarn, 4-ply, Hauser, cable, crepe, opposing ply, which we didn't talk about, but this was a 3-ply opposing ply yarn, and a gimp yarn or spiral ply. Actually, now that I think about it, I think that this guy was actually an opposing ply, 4-ply. And I made them all, knitting them over the summer, I think. I made them all into socks. And I am wearing a pair right now. I have been wearing them, and so far none of them have got holes. And I'm just really proud of this because it was so much work. The 4-ply, we got the 4-ply. We've got the crepe that I did some lining up and plying. I did separated the colors so you'd have all the yellow from this colorway in the toe. The opposing ply, I was very intentional about lining the colors up and plying. And the one I'm most proud of is the one down here in the corner, the Hauser yarn, where I split it up into 8ths so that after the Hauser yarn was finished, it would be a very subtle gradient from the toe to the cuff. So that was my contribution, and I will still be reporting back about how they wear when they start wearing out, which will hopefully not be for a couple of years. Fingers crossed. Okay, and now it's time to get into new material, pictures that have not been, for the most part, have not been shared on community participations that haven't been shared before. And this is the textured yarn section that we have been working on for the past almost 6 months, I think, all fall and all through the winter. So, you know, these yarns have so many names, whether art yarn, novelty yarn, but we settled on textured yarn. And I subtitled this as yarn that demands to just be yarn because we're always asking how do we use these yarns. And so I'm just going to leave that question there and then hopefully remember to not bring it up again. So let's see all of the amazing textured yarns that you guys have been making for the past several months. Our first section was talking about core spun, which is a whole chapter in this book of different core yarns you can do. Esther made a core spun, which is all the way like a soft core spun is what Sarah calls it, a soft core spun, where you're just putting fiber right over a core. And then she had a couple different goes at making super coils. She had one with a very thick and thin on the bottom one, and then with a slightly more consistent yarn on the top, and made some really, really beautiful, delightful super coils. Super coils being when you are wrapping an actual single around a core instead of just fiber, just soft fiber. Okay, I've got to share this story because it is so amazing. Maria really went ham on the core spun. I'm just going to read what she said here. My adventure with the core spun sweater continues. So on the right side of your screen, you've got this whole sweater quantity of core spun that she made with fiber she dyed herself. I hope I'm getting this all right, Maria. I'm sure you'll correct me. In this beautiful sagey green, and then the contrast color was a sort of a lighter sagey green. She actually started knitting, it's cut off by the layout here, but she started knitting a whole yoke of her sweater and then decided she was not happy with the color, so she frogged it and over dyed it to make it a darker green. And I hope she doesn't mind me sharing that. She's making lots of beautiful green things lately, and she said green is a color for hope in Finland. So maybe we all need some hope. I thought that was really beautiful. And green's like my favorite color. So yeah, Maria took a beautiful color and made it even more beautiful and made a completely gorgeous sweater out of it. So huge core spinning props to Maria. Well done. A less happy story was Alberto's experiment with super coils. He was very unhappy with this, which I totally get. It's hard. Making super coil is hard to do, especially because you're dealing with that core that's just getting so much twist in it. My favorite way to do it is to just cheat and have your singles on an e-spinner that's taking the twist out of your core as you're working. But he managed to get this adorable little sample of super coils. So I think he felt like he could move on after this, which is fine. You know, sometimes you spin a little sample and you're good. I definitely had those yarns for myself. Way more success for Alberto was in the boucle department. So boucle is a whole chapter in our book, and I really spent a lot of time on this. I've talked about my boucle yarns to death. You can go see those episodes if you want. And Alberto spent a lot of time on these as well. So he did this sample. He started with a sample of boucle. I don't remember. Maybe he's going to say later what the wool was that he used. I think this is like a long wool, like a Romney, and he did experiment with mohair later. So yeah, using a larger pulley to slow down the twist. But yeah, he was super happy with this sample, and then he went on to experiment more with double boucle. So he did the first two steps of boucle where you have the loops around a core, and then instead of binding it, he doubled it, which is one of Sarah's suggestions, but it made this like really beautifully densely looped boucle. That was, I think, it looks like a more substantial skein to me, but it's just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. Oh, he was using Lincoln before. That's what it would say. Yeah, and one more set of boucle samples. He was experimenting more with mohair this time, and just being more intentional about spacing the loops or having a thicker core. And yeah, so great job, Alberto. I'm with you, and just we really enjoyed spending time with boucle. Esther also got into some boucle here. She said this was some playful experiments with using some. I think she used some unspun singles rather than. Correct me if I'm wrong, Esther, but rather than like spinning new singles, using some stuff she had, and it made these wonderful loopy, open, fluffy boucle that she knit into a hat. She says, the fabric is dense, warm, and not heavy all at once. Yeah, and she knit this up super loosely on smaller needles to help try not to knit into the loops. That is the challenge with knitting with boucle. But it can be done, and it can be delightful. And weaving with boucle is something that I explored a lot and really enjoyed. But it was, yeah, boucle, a special time was had with boucle. Going back to coils and sort of getting into beehives here, Gunilla made these lovely, this lovely yarn with this neat singles. Yeah, so she was going for beehives um, and sort of she wasn't sure whether she was doing like intermittent coils, which is another yarn that we talked about, sort of adjacent to super coils. But these beehives are very, very pretty. I like the color a lot and how they wrapped. But she was surprised that they turned out a little bit smaller. And I am making a similar yarn, right now, and it is hard getting those beehives to the size you want them. You have to spin them bigger than you think. And I think we'll see that again in a minute with Alberto's beehives. Excuse me. And this was, Alberto did 2 different yarns with this, and this was really helpful. So I'm going to highlight what he did. On the bottom, this picture right here on the bottom, this was his first set of singles that he did, and he found that it was a little bit loose, and so he tried again, adding a ton more twist to his singles. Excuse me, I'm covering this up. Maybe I'll just move myself over. So yeah, I think the learning that he's finding, which I'm also finding to be true right now, is that if you're making this plied beehive yarn, you need a lot more twist than you think, and you have to manipulate your slubs into beehives when you come down to it. Yeah. So well done, Alberto. I think a theme that I definitely found throughout this year, and that I think some of you found sometimes, is that it was really helpful when trying a new technique to spin a sample and then come back to it. Take what you learned and then try again. It often isn't enough to just spin one sample, because you learn from your mistakes and you think, okay, I'd do this differently next time. Just do it again right then. It doesn't have to be a big spin. With textured yarns, even big spins tend to go pretty quickly. So you can really get a lot of learning done in a short period of time by just going back and trying again. Don't always have to do that, but that can be really fruitful. Alberto also spent a lot of time on pigtails. Super slow making, he noticed, experimenting with how the fiber, the size of the pigtails, the technique used. Those were all factors in pigtails. For me, pigtails was one where I was kind of like one and done. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this one. It doesn't really make me happy. But Alberto got some really nice samples. You really, really do have to put high twist into your singles to make a pigtail yarn work. At least the singles that will be pigtailing, they need extra twist, because that's where it goes. You have to have that extra twist to go into the pigtails, and then a regular twist single to put with it. And Alberto also made a wolf yarn. Wolf yarn was one of the last yarns that we spent time with. It's actually back in the core chapter, but this is basically, it's a coreless core spun with fiber. Yeah, the 2 little fingers get a workout, Alberto said. Maybe a larger supply is more helpful. Yeah, it does go really, really fast, but well done, Alberto. And Renate also tried a wolf yarn, and she wove it up. I just thought this was really cool. She used a cardboard box and a bunch of matches to make just a little homemade loom that she could use to weave up her wolf yarn and see how it did. She found it was really difficult. I mean, needle weaving is always difficult, but the wolf yarn in particular, she found tended to get tangled. But it was also really strong. Even though it was getting stuck and tangled and she was having to manipulate it a lot, it held together, which is one of the amazing things about wolf yarn, is that it's a singles yarn that is quite tough. So very neat. I hope you're really proud of yourself, Renate, because this is a really neat swatch that you managed to make with the box and the matches. So thank you again, everyone, for coming on this journey with me and with Rachel. It was a journey, but I really enjoyed spending this time with you. I really enjoyed working through this book and, taking some time, not just to spin samples, but to spin, to go a little bit deeper into the yarns that really interested me. And I hope you feel like you got a chance to do that as well. This is, we did it. We did this. And this is something that we can return to whenever we need to. We made these yarns together. We've shared these. And so, in future, new knitters who join us can go back and look at the modules that we did, the yarns that Rachel spun, and the past content that she's done, and take this journey in whatever pieces they can. If you only participated in part of it, that is awesome. If you participated at the beginning and then found you didn't have time, that's awesome. This is here for you. Now we did it. We can sort of package this up and say, we did it, and come back to it when we're ready, when we need it. And yeah, I'm really proud of what we did. So good job. Give yourself a round of applause. And we're just going to take a deep breath and spin some default yarn. Maybe. We're going to take a little break from an intense study like this and use our new learnings, put them to use. All right, ladies and gents, so let's talk about what comes next. As I said, I don't know about you, but after such a long and intense period of experimentation, I would really like a chance to kind of step back and do a bigger project. There is a really colorful, bigger project that I have been sitting on. I have told lots of you about it. A lot of you know about it already. But the idea is to make a big spin, a thick and thin spiral plied spin, sometimes called a flame yarn, and make a sweater quantity of it so I can make the sweater on the back of Yarnitecture, which is, I believe, called the Dye Goddess sweater. I am sure I have shown you this before. It's just a fairly plain pullover. And as this book, Yarnitecture, is a spinning book, she very kindly gives us a beautiful look at the yarn that she made and how the fabric turned out. So I could call this next section, I could call it fiber prep, I could call it hand spinning, but I've chosen to call it beginner's corner, and I'm gonna double dip a little bit. One topic that can be really helpful when you're getting started is knowing what to do with the beautiful braids that we tend to accumulate. I love beautiful braids, and knowing how to just sort of analyze them, unbraid them, take a look at them. It's a real cornerstone of Rachel's work, of her book, and the Breaking a Braid class that some of you may be taking. And so I'm going to go over just looking at the braids that I chose for this project, unbraiding them, and breaking them down so that we are ready to spin them. Hi guys, so I have my Zero to Hero that I'm about to start, and I wanted to share the very first steps of it with you. So this is going to be my fiber prep, and there's going to be some crinkling, some unpackaging here. So as I have probably iterated before, going to make some noise. I am planning to make a thick and thin spiral ply yarn. And I've been quietly collecting these braids for this purpose for a little bit over over a year, I guess. Yeah, some of these I got in 2014. Let me show you what I have here. I have 2 braids from Yarn Experiments that have these like highlighter colors in them. Like this one has this highlighter yellow, just very, very loud. I love it. And this one has some really neon green as well as some pink, sort of Barbie. What did she call this one? I'm Just Ken. I love that. And this is from Yarn Experiments, I think. This one says Summer Margarita. Very cute. I bought that at the, what is it, the Frederick Fiber Festival. This one I got at the same time from Kira, WXYZ, or Kira Wiggins. This is it's a tweedy top, and I like it because it's just got these, it's this neutral rose color with this beautiful tweedy pops of bright pink, and it's got some heathering in there. Very, very nice. This is a braid I actually won in a contest. Kim Dye's Yarn, colorway Naked Cake. And again, it's getting in that neutral zone. I don't know why my camera is shaking so much. And then I have 2 from Bramble Ridge that have, like, this one's got some of that not quite neon yellow, or green, but it's got some bright green. And this one also has some yellow, but more on the neutral gray side. So I'm really going for this neons and neutrals palette. So I'm going to prep these to be scrambled for a combo spin. And I'm going to do that by opening them all up. And I just want to take a minute to, as we unbraid them, to this will be relevant if you are taking Rachel's Breaking a Braid class, that when you open up a braid, you want to take a look at it and examine how the colors are laid out on that braid. And so since we have some examples, I just want to take a look at them as I break them down. This one obviously is going to be homogeneous throughout. There's no color repeats here. It's not hand dyed. It is fully blended. So we'll set that one aside. So this braid has what I would call space dyeing, as in the fiber actually was gray to start with, or it had a sort of overall bath of gray, and then was over dyed with just these chunks of color. So it'll come out mostly gray with these little bits and highlights. As I lay this out, I'm not really seeing a pattern, so it's definitely not hand painted in like the traditional sense. Like there's a bunch of orange on one side that doesn't really come up again until nearly the end. There's a bunch of pink in the middle. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a repeat in here, so it's got randomly space dyed, and that is going to make a difference for how I break it down and what I do as I break it down. So that's number 1. Let's take a look at one of the Bramble Ridge ones. This is colorway Just a Dash. Stop. All right, here we can see this was hand painted. So I can line it up and see that there are discernible repeats of color, and I can lay it out. I can basically replicate how it was laid out when it was dyed. And this is cool because it has a number of short repeats. These could be a lot longer, but it has a bunch of shorter repeats of color that will blend together a lot as I spin it. So when I go to break this up, it'll be easy to break it into chunks that each have every color in them. So I'm planning on breaking this down into at least halves, maybe quarters, and then breaking it up into chunks that are go from end to end, so I can distribute all of the colors as much throughout throughout my work as possible. This is going to make you sick if you're bouncing around. Maybe I can do some stabilizing and it won't even matter. You won't even be able to tell. This is Hastings Sunrise. Rachel spun this. She bought this at Knit City. It was the Knit City colorway. And I didn't buy it there, but then I broke down and got it later because I wanted it. Let's just be real. I just wanted it. This one's a bit more space dyed. It has a lot of white in it. So you can tell it'll really lighten up. But it has that lovely teal. And it follows a similar pattern of short repeats of color. And I do see this on not all of Megan's braids, but several that I've seen so far of having these short runs of color that just blend together super nicely. So similar, very, very similar. Let's pull out Monica's. This is interesting. This is not braided together sort of what I would call traditionally. I don't know how you do it like this, but it's like the whole thing is folded into thirds and then actually braided as opposed to crocheted. Seems like it would be a lot harder to do it this way, but what do I know? So as you can see, these are much longer color repeats. Still hand painted, but longer stretches of fiber. This one has a little purple hanging out up there, a little bit of an anomaly. So much longer repeats, many fewer of them. So what I might do is strip these down a little bit more so that there's the same number of pieces. And that way I can still make sure I get my pops of yellow in every separate piece that I get. Let's see if it's the same story for Monica's other braid here. All right, we're free. This one, just quite different. We have just 3.5 very long repeats. There we go. So if I lay it out like that, whoa, it's so long it's not even going to fit on the camera. We've got a purple at one end and the pink at the other end. So it's basically 4 and a bit repeats. So same thing, many fewer repeats of this colorway. So seeing this, I think my target is going to be to break each braid down into maybe 20 pieces. And I'm going to do that by carefully splitting it down. What I may do to just make my life a little easier is I'll try it both ways and let you know how it goes. But I'll rip up the repeats first so that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if I have exactly 20 because I'll be like, I'm going to toss them like a salad and grab from them randomly. So for me, the main thing is I want to make sure to get a little bit of this green in everyone. So I'll break this down here at the end. So I'll have some that are just purple and green and I'll have some that are just pink and green. And then the middle sections will have some of each. The main thing is, because I'm doing a thick and thin, I want to make sure that I don't strip my pieces so narrow that I don't get those nice big slubs. So I'll have to pay attention. But I think stripping them down to 1/4, I think that'll be okay. So let's give her a go. So I think having shorter pieces will just make it easier to easier to keep my smaller pieces tidy as I break them up. So if you've never seen me do this before, you know, when you split a braid, when you strip it, you can do this with the whole length of the braid. I'm just doing it in smaller chunks because I'm going to chunk it anyway. You can usually like open it up and see where the natural breaks in the fiber are. And you just find a likely place. If you're splitting it in half, you know, about the middle. If you split it into thirds, it's a little bit more unfeeling, and you just try and keep it really gentle. You don't want to just rip it apart, because then you'll be a little bit rough on the beautiful worsted prep that you have. And we're going to go ahead and split this again. Yeah, looking at this, I think this will be plenty thick enough for making a good thick and thin. So I'm just going to wrap that into a nest. Yeah, and I'm going to just repeat this process a couple hundred times. Okay, I'll see you when I'm done. Okay, I have this huge pile of nests all over my desk. So a few reflections on this. I ended up, after the first one, I stripped first and then broke it, because it was just too much work to break a whole like braid, to do it over and over and over again, especially on these braids where I would have had to do it like 8 times. So I stripped first and then broke it up. So these two, like you saw, I stripped in 4 and then broke into, you know, five or 6 pieces each. So I have, you know, around 20, 24 of each of these from Monica, and the 2 braids from Megan. Because they were such short repeats, I split those into 3 strips and then got each repeat. So these are more like 27-ish, about 27 each of these. And then for these 2, since this one was randomly spaced out and this one is uniform, I just split the whole thing in quarters and then each and each. So there's actually 32 smaller bits of each of these. These are not, I can tell that they're quite short. So these are not going to have as big of slubs, but that's okay. I think having these sort of more evenly distributed through the bright colors will be a good thing. So I was going to toss these all like a salad, and then I realized, you know what, I am going to organize these into bags so that they are at least evenly distributed throughout each skein. I think I'm going to break this up into 8 skeins. I think that sounds about right. Given my, you know, my bobbin size, I don't want them to be huge skeins. So yeah, I'm going to just finish, but you know, here they all are. Beautiful pile of nests. Okay, now as you can see, I've got 8 bags like this with, I've divided up the colorways so they're each equally represented in these bags. And then when I go to spin them, I just reach in and choose a nest at random. Yeah, the only rule being that I'm not going to spin 2 in a row from the same colorway. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Next time I'll talk about the singles that I'm going to make, and just how to spin hopefully good singles for this flame yarn that I'm trying to make. And yeah, hopefully it all goes smoothly. I should say real quick, this project is inspired by this book, Neons and Neutrals by Amy Gillet. This is where I got this this sweater pattern. This is the Wervel pattern by Micah van Gain. I'm sure I'm getting your name wrong. I'm so sorry. But I made this with commercial yarn, with 2 sets of Party of 5 and some gray sock yarn from Sweet Georgia. And just a little bit of hand spun in these blue sections that my mom made. So even though this sweater pattern is from Yarnitecture, the idea of doing it with these bright highlighter colors kind of pops against a neutral, more pastel background. So even though this sweater that I'm going to be making, even though the pattern is from Yarnitecture, the kind of all the color inspiration comes from this book, because I just love, I love that vibe, that highlighters plus neutrals and pastels. I just really enjoy that. So if you are also going to try a Zero to Hero, please post about it on Slack, on Instagram, use the hashtag Zero to Hero. And we are hoping that lots of people are interested in, and we get, we can give out some prizes and showcase y'all's work. You have until the end of 2026, so I'm going to try and knock this out fairly quickly. I'm hoping that it'll be done by the end of April. But if you would like a longer term project, that is totally fine as well. Yeah, so that is it for today. Thank you again for being here. Thank you to everyone who participated in our book project, in our book study. So thank you again, and I am looking forward to getting started, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next time. So happy spinning, happy making, happy all the things. Stay warm out there if you're in a cold place. Stay cool if you're in a warm place, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.